Hi, gang. Welcome to Mondays with Michael Live here in the room. Before we get started today, I just wanted to send a thoughts and prayers to all of those in Las Vegas. Obviously, we're watching here in Northern Virginia what's happening in Las Vegas today, and our thoughts and prayers go out to the families of those who are affected, those who are still in the hospital, those who are grieving, and a special thank you to those first responders, police, fire, and those men and women who put themselves on the line every day for us. And from all accounts, they did an awesome job last night. So we're keeping everyone in Las Vegas in our thoughts and prayers. Hope you do the same. But let's get to today's session. So today's session is on getting better data, or how to use data into making a better hiring decision for your organization. And what I hear from clients all the time, and excuse me, I'm going to go up and down on my notes again today, but what I hear from clients all the time is that we're always looking for good people, and good people are always so hard to find. How do we make a better hiring decision? How do we know who's going to best fit our team? How do I know that someone has the skills, attitude, and the experience I need when I hire them? And how do I make these decisions? So I'm going to give you some feedback today on some tips I give clients about selection, hiring, the whole process. We'll talk a little about what works, what doesn't work, some suggestions for you along the way, and then toward the back end, we'll talk a little about one of the assessments that we offer our clients to help get them more data to make better decisions. So let's just start with the cost of turnover, and I'll give you a little bit of information. So if you search on the web, you go online, you'll see that, and you'll see this on the SHRM website, SHRM. The average cost of turnover for a company is anywhere between 20 and 40% of the salary. So if you're hiring somebody at $50,000 a year and they don't work out, and you need to rehire somebody to replace that person, the hard costs are about $10,000 to $15,000. That includes recruiting costs, advertising, time spent for executives to, interview the person, show them around the office. But the other cost that sometimes clients don't really measure is the cost of productivity with the job being open. The easiest way to describe this is in sales. If you have 10 sales slots you need to fill, 10 sales employees, and you're missing two, well, there's two folks who aren't generating sales for you. So there's a way to measure lost productivity with the job being open. And then there's a stress that comes on other team members because, it normally happens on a team. If you're short one or two people, everyone else needs to, pick up the slack. And so there's that cost too. Or what is it? Tension on the team to help finish the work at the end of the day because the job is open. So how do we get to a place where we're using more data to make better informed decisions about employees that will stay on your team a little longer and fit into the culture and have the skills and the attitude you need to be successful? So that's the cost of turnover. I did get a couple questions along the way. I have gotten questions along the way about this topic. So the first thing I always recommend or suggest to clients is to review the current job description, or the job rec. If you're in government contracting, you understand what I mean by job rec. And this may be a bit old school. I have clients who say, Michael, we don't use job descriptions anymore because jobs change all the time. But a good job description gives you the basis to understand what it is you're looking for. And it also is the basis for the interview questions you're going to use when you finally get a candidate sitting down, because you want to get the candidate to a place where they can describe to you in that interview times that they've actually demonstrated the skills, ability, and behaviors in the workplace. And the way to do that generally is by having a good, solid job description. We recommend to clients that they update this job description anytime the job comes open. So if you have an open job right now, grab that job description, take a look at it, make sure it's up to date. What are the skills needed? What is the background needed? What is the education needed? What are the behaviors needed to be successful in that job? So it's a good time when the job is open to update the job description. Then you want to review the selection process. So every company has a standard selection process. So here are a couple options for you. I'll give you some feedback on what our clients see it tend to work. So usually there's a point of contact in the organization. It's either somebody in HR, somebody in recruiting, or it could be the line manager responsible for being the first point of contact when the job is out open, whether it's in the advertisement or it's on your website. somebody's going to connect to the company seeing that there's a job opening. So someone's going to need to do some due diligence on the front end. And let's say that's somebody in HR. So someone in HR gets this information from the potential candidate. So once that connection is made, what is your selection process? Is it interview with the recruiter first, HR first? Is it interview with the line manager first, then HR? Is it a combination of both? Do you do one-on-one interviews? Do you interview both with the manager department, and does your candidate interview with team members? Is it an individual one-on-one interview, or is it a panel interview? Some of our clients do this in panel interviewing, where candidates go down and actually interview with a group of people at the same time. My suggestion is whatever way you choose, you be consistent in that process. My other suggestion to clients is whatever way you choose, we try to get to a place where not everyone's asking the same question. So if you are going to do this kind of group approach, whether it's via panel or via across 3 or 4 people over a course of several days, that group should organize itself and decide, okay, you're going to ask these set of questions, you'll ask these set of questions, and you'll ask these set of questions. Now, there may be a question or two that each person asks along the way just to make sure you're validating the answer along the way. But as a general rule, you don't want a candidate to sit down with the same 10 questions for 4 different interviews. It's probably not a good use of their time, probably not a good use of your time. So use that process consistently. And if you need to do a background check, make sure you do it at the same place for every candidate you do it. So if you do it before they come in the company, that's fine. You may have to do it on the back end. Just be consistent in where you try to access that information on background check. Second part of this is make sure everyone's trained in interviewing skills. And we see this a lot in organizations where frontline supervisors, folks in HR, recruiting, tend to do this on a more regular basis, tend to know the legal aspect and what they can and cannot ask. But when you get down to the frontline managers and even the team members, have to be careful about what they can and cannot ask of a candidate when they come into a job interview. So it's very, very important that everyone on the team who's in the selection process understands what they can and cannot ask. So make sure that either you do some training, we offer some courses both in the classroom and online, and sometimes it's just a good refresher to make sure that everyone's on the same page on what they can and cannot ask. Next is, most everyone that you're going to interview either comes with their resume they're going to email to you, or there's some type of electronic resume that they're going to have. Resumes are great. It's a good way to introduce the candidate to the company. We have found over the years, and probably no surprise anyone listening to this, that there are folks who are not real genuine when it comes to what they have on their resume. It could be a skill, it could be something with a job. What we tend to advise our clients in looking at is making sure that, at least from a job history, that there aren't a lot of wide gaps between jobs. If they are, you're welcome to ask and should ask questions about, okay, I see that you were at XYZ company for a year, but then you were not employed for 18 months before you went to the next company. Now, there may be a good legitimate reason why that person wasn't employed for 18 months, but you may want to ask that question to make sure you have all that information as you move forward. So while we talked a little about this, panel versus non-panel and team interviews, panel interviews can be quite intimidating. When you ask a candidate to come into the office, they're sitting in a room and there are 4, 5, 6 people in front of them, or in a conference room. It can be a bit intimidating. So I'd be careful in doing that. It does save a lot of time because everybody's in the room at the same time. And so the candidate doesn't need to come back and meet with all of those executives one at a time. But you just need to be a bit careful about the pressure you're going to put on that individual when they come into a panel interview. And again, as I mentioned earlier, if you are doing a panel interview, make sure that everyone has their own set of questions and you're not asking the same question 3 or 4 times. So there's quite a bit of preparation that needs to happen before a panel interview. So what assessments can help you in this process? We have clients that use a variety of assessments in recruiting and training. And you have to be careful about which assessment you use in the selection process. There are assessments that can be used in the training process that aren't really good to use in the selection process. They're not validated to use in selection. You can't use them on a legal basis. So I would just be really careful about your selection of the assessment you use in the process. That said, we do have an assessment that is valid and is legal to use in the selection process. It's the PXT Select assessment. For those of you who've been on our website, you've seen that before. Our assessment measures thinking style, behavioral traits, and interests of the candidate. The assessment itself takes about an hour to take. The way our assessment process works is you compare your candidate's results to the results of a performance model or a benchmark, if you will. There are a couple ways to build that benchmark, and we can go over that with you one-on-one if you're interested in that. But you really want to make sure that that you're consistent again in where you position the assessment. So our assessment measures thinking style, behavioral traits, and then interest of the candidate. So you're trying to compare what a candidate brings to the table to the requirements of the job. And similar to the face-to-face interview where you're trying to get a lot of data face-to-face from the candidate, you also want to try to get some data that's kind of under the surface, and that's what the assessment will do for you. It'll get some more data about what the individual actually can do, because there are some right and wrong questions in our assessment, what they like to do based on the interests, and then how they behave at work. What's their behavior, so that their behaviors are more in tune or in line with those on the team and those in the organization. On the behavior side, I tell clients of mine that the behavior section is similar to, let's say, hiring. I go back to my salesperson analogy all the time. If you're hiring a salesperson in Des Moines, Iowa, it's different than the salesperson in New York City, New York. So there are different behaviors depending on even location for the same job description. So you need to create this kind of benchmark model, and there are a couple ways to do that in our system. That said, I do want to talk to you about a couple of events that we have coming up to talk a little more about our assessment process. On October 10th at 11 o'clock in the morning Eastern Standard Time, we will do an hour briefing on our assessment tool, the PXT Select assessment. After the session today, I'll put a little link in the notes here in the comment section so you can register for that. And for those of you in the Washington, D.C. area, on November 2nd, we'll be doing a live executive briefing in Tyson's Corner about the same assessment. So again, I'll put a link to that PDF flyer and registration information in our assessment. As always, I'm always open for questions on this topic or other topics. I appreciate those that are sending in questions. You can send your questions to me via email, ferraro@trainingsolutions.com, or here chat and at Facebook. Let me pull out my schedule for next week and let me know that what we're talking about next week. Our schedule next week, next Monday, will be on classroom training versus online training. I get this question all the time from our clients. What's better, Michael, classroom training or online training? So I'll give you some tips what we've learned over the years in both online and classroom training, sort of things you should think about if you're doing training in the classroom, some things you might want to think about if you're doing online training. We offer a little bit of both, and I'll tell you about our experience with both. See, I'm just passing up 13 minutes on the clock here, so I want to keep these under 15 minutes. So for now, I'm going to say goodbye. Feel free to send messages along the way, and we'll see you next Monday with myself. Mondays with Michael live here in the Training Solutions room. Have a great day. Take care.